All right, all right. Thank you for being here. My name is Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. So let's jump in with our agenda for this evening. All right, so we're going to do our announcements. We'll have an opportunity for people to introduce themselves or share any victories that they had this week. We'll talk about the recommended reading. I have an audiobook excerpt for you guys again tonight from my book. We'll have our topic discussion, take a little break, and then when we come back, we'll work on the exercise, the assignment for tonight, as well as any questions and answers. So as always, our first announcement, author-signed paperback. Have a promo code for you guys if you don't already have the book or if you want to give a gift to somebody else. Use the promo code BOOK20 at checkout, and that will save you 20% on the author-signed paperback from my website. So again, go to bebiggertoday.com/book, and when you check out, put BOOK20 in the promo code thingy. Also, my audiobook, I'm working on it, guys. I'm hoping in the next 1 to 2 weeks it will finally be done. I know a bunch of you have already pre-ordered it. Thank you so much. If you haven't gotten your copy yet, you can pre-order it for $9.99. That's almost half off the regular price. And on the audiobook as well as the author-signed paperback, if you don't love it, just let me know and you get your money back. Unconditional money-back guarantee. Go to bebiggertoday.com/bookstore, and you can find the audiobook there. And again, I have merch. We have t-shirts and hats. So if you're interested in looking your best this coming fall with the blue and gold motif, you can get books, you can get t-shirts or hats, and you can save 20% with the promo code MERCH20 at checkout. And then also I am available for one-on-one coaching. If you're a writer, if you're an artist, if you're a photographer, if you're a creative person, or even if you're not, I'm happy to work with you one-on-one. Or if you have a business or work for a company, you'd like me to come in virtually or in person to speak to your management team, your sales team, I can help them all be bigger than they think they are. So just get in touch with me and we'll set that up. All right, so we're going to jump in tonight with tonight's recommended reading. I'm guessing that some of you guys are familiar already with the Law of Attraction material. Abraham-Hicks Publications publishes books and videos and CDs and MP3s, all kinds of great stuff on the Law of Attraction. Now, I don't know if they actually coined that phrase, but they're probably on the forefront. Abraham-Hicks is probably on the forefront of material in this particular area. And I highly recommend just going to their website. It's abraham-hicks.com, and just see what they have available that resonates with you. They have a great YouTube channel, and it's totally free, and you can watch the videos there. They're usually excerpts from the workshops they do live, or at least they were before COVID. They were doing live workshops all around the world. And I'm not going to get into any specific detail, but take a look at it, check it out. As I said, the YouTube channel is a great place to start, and their books are great. All the material is great. Been very helpful for me in my journey. I know a lot of people, as I said, I'm sure some of you guys are already familiar with it, but if you're not, Abraham-Hicks.com. Check it out. All right, so we are going to talk about our topic for tonight, which is a continuation of the last few weeks. And we have been talking about taking responsibility. Now, I'm going to have a lot more to say about this tonight, but what I want to do now is start with an excerpt from my audiobook on this topic. So if you have the book and you want to follow along, we're going to be starting in the middle of page 45, actually top of page 45. And this excerpt is a little longer. It's going to be about 12 minutes. but I didn't want to cut it halfway. I usually do about 5 or 6 minutes. But as you'll see, I didn't want to stop it halfway. So we're going to play it, and then we'll come back and talk about it. All right, so don't go away. Pull it up here on the tablet.
So to take responsibility, we start by letting go of the notion that other people and/or external events are the cause of our reactions. We understand and accept that what we think, feel, say, and do is a result of how we see ourselves, not what someone else is saying or doing. The way to do this is to be as aware as possible in each moment of our actions and reactions. We then take that awareness and try to intentionally change who we think we are in a way that will result in a more positive outcome. This may seem like a tall order, but it is possible to do this. I know from my own experiences, some of which I'll describe in later chapters. Bottom line is, we can't continue to blame other people and/or the events and circumstances of our lives for what we think, feel, say, or do and expect anything to be different. You may be familiar with the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. He says it's our personality that gives rise to our personal reality. He reminds us that we can't think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, speak the same words, and take the same actions day after day and expect our lives to change. We literally have to become someone new if we want to have a different experience. It should be obvious that it will take conscious awareness on our part to achieve this. This is why I spent time in the last chapter explaining that it's actually possible to change who we are in the world. I emphasized that most of our negative thoughts and beliefs are just made-up fictions. Yet if you think thoughts like, I'll never change, or this is just the way I am, and so on, you're dead in the water. You'll never even bother to take the first step in becoming a new you. Thus, you must begin by seeing that change is possible. If you really want your life to be different, you'll have to find a way to believe that you can teach an old dog new tricks. Many people believe change is possible, just not for them. They may have a long history of trying to be different in certain areas of their lives, but never reaching their goal. This leads them to conclude they can't make significant or lasting changes. While it may be different for everyone, I think people who have reached this point are really saying they can't handle any more disappointment. Whether it's changing who we are in certain situations or actually pursuing a particular goal in our lives, we try, but something always seems to get in the way. At a certain point, the disappointment becomes too much. We eventually give up on our dreams simply because it's too painful to continue to try and fail. Dealing with disappointment has been an ongoing challenge in my own life. I still wrestle with it at times and will describe later what I've learned in terms of overcoming it. For now, I'll say it seems like failure is a natural part of almost everyone's journey to success. In interview after interview that I've read with successful people, they've all had to deal with their share of things not working out. And some of them failed quite publicly. Few people are successful the first or even the 10th time out. So if you want to achieve anything significant in your life, you better figure out in advance how to deal with the inevitable setbacks and disappointments. In my case, the pain of disappointment was often compounded by the agony of self-recrimination. Being more forgiving of myself has been a huge first step in undoing the hex disappointment had previously cast over me. Becoming more aware. We now know the importance of becoming more aware of the thoughts and feelings that drive us every day. This is especially true in terms of taking responsibility for our lives. There are several things we can do to help raise our awareness of the thoughts and beliefs that don't serve us. Number 1, slow down. In the last chapter, I mentioned the benefits of meditation. For me, this is a powerful way to become more aware of our thoughts. Yet few people take the time to do this. Instead, we rush through our day, racing from one task to the next. Rushing becomes a way to avoid being in the moment and does not foster contemplative living. There's no way around the fact that if we want a more peaceful and productive life, we need to take responsibility for how we manage our time. This includes slowing down and making room in our schedules for things like relaxation and meditation. The more frantic our lives, the less chance of becoming aware in the moment of who we think we are. Number 2, identify patterns. Begin to look for habitual or repetitive ways you react to certain people and/or situations. When I started doing this, I was shocked. For example, as I'll discuss in Chapter 7, I've had many challenges with neighbors over the years. In one case, I found that every time they turned on their shower or flushed their toilet, I had an extreme negative reaction. This reaction stemmed from the fact that whenever they did this, I experienced a precipitous drop in water pressure and temperature. On more than one occasion, this interrupted my ability to complete my own shower or finish washing the dishes. The problem was my reaction became so conditioned that I would experience negative emotions even if I wasn't using my water at that moment. This habitual reaction continually reinforced the resentment and powerlessness I felt in that living situation. Noticing patterns means we can anticipate future situations and make changes before things become a problem. An example of this in a minute. 3. Stop the blame and complain game. We said earlier we can't continue to blame other people, situations, and/or circumstances for how we feel and expect our lives to change. So as soon as your mind goes to you, it, they make me feel, flag it. This means you're not taking responsibility for your feelings. Sometimes it's not obvious when we're blaming others. Muttering jerk or worse under our breath when another car cuts in front of us means we just blame that driver for how we feel. Doesn't matter what they did or if they were right or wrong for doing it. We take the focus off others and keep it on ourselves when we take responsibility for our lives. This doesn't mean we have to put up with someone else's inappropriate behavior. We'll discuss in later chapters how we can take care of ourselves without attacking others. But it does mean we have to be aware that the moment we blame someone else for how we feel, we're giving our power away. Likewise, constantly complaining about what other people are doing to us announces that who we think we are is a victim. Even if someone else was initially at fault, every time we repeat the story, we're actually re-injuring ourselves. It's like picking at a scab. We reopen the wound rather than letting it heal. Moreover, complaining to others can ruin that person's day. It's tantamount to dumping our emotional baggage on them. It's often an unconscious attempt to elicit sympathy and/or agreement that we're right and the person who harmed us is wrong. We're selfishly looking for allies in our crusade for self-pity. Yet what we're really doing is pulling the other person down into our own quagmire of unhappiness. Whatever the motivation, complaining to others about others is never an empowered way to live. Number 4, no more excuses. We said being responsible starts with owning all our choices and decisions. Making excuses is the opposite of that. So, for instance, be on the lookout for when you say something like, well, I have no choice. I have to do this because of what, name a person, said or did. What's actually happening is we're using someone else's behavior as an excuse for a choice that we're about to make. You make me do is a close first cousin to you make me feel. Neither are true. Similarly, notice when you claim you're doing something out of obligation or when you feel like what you're doing is a sacrifice. Both imply that you're doing something because you have to rather than because you want to. Truth is, no one ever does anything against their will. What we call obligation is really a decision like any other. We expect to gain from doing it, though the nature of that gain may not be so obvious. A basic law of human nature is we do everything we do because we think it will confer some benefit upon us. Otherwise, we'd never do it. So saying something like we're attending a work or family function out of obligation is to deny our true motivation. A benefit of us attending such a function might be to win favor and/or to avoid conflict with another person. For instance, you may complain to others about having to go to your boss's weekly karaoke night at the local YMCA. Yet deep down you know attending will keep you in his good graces. So you're actually choosing to participate because of the benefit you think you'll get by doing it. Likewise, sacrifice implies we're giving up something that's important to us. But if I'm giving it up, I must think I'm getting a thing of equal or greater value in return. What we call sacrifice, therefore, can often be us trying to look good in front of others. He's such a good husband. Look at all he sacrifices for his family. Or it may be an attempt to make others feel guilty. For example, constantly telling your kids how much you do for them could be your way to make them feel bad for what you perceive as their ingratitude. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do things for others. Devoted and selfless service is good for us as individuals as well as for our families and our nations. And of course, there are many people who have made tremendous sacrifices for their fellow citizens and their country. What I'm talking about here is making excuses by claiming we're doing something we really don't want to do. Taking responsibility means owning all our choices and actions rather than hiding them behind the veil of excuse, obligation, or sacrifice. Number 5, turn off the TV. Messages from the entertainment, news, and advertising media often reinforce the belief that something outside causes us to feel or act a certain way. For instance, look at the average blockbuster movie. The good guy is always justified in blowing up the bad guy because of what the bad guy did. Stole the good guy's money, ran over his cat, started a nuclear war. You know, the usual bad guy stuff. All these things make the good guy feel and act a certain way. It's the bad guy's fault that the good guy reacts the way he does. For this reason, we love conflict and drama, both in our own lives and on our screens. It arises out of one character blaming the other for how they feel. You've never heard anyone on a soap opera say, "Clarence, I understand you're leaving me for the gardener, but I get to decide how I feel, and I choose not to be upset about this." That show would be off the air in 2 minutes. Similarly, most advertising tells us we need to buy a particular product to feel a certain way. The subtext is, you can't feel that way without buying this product. Given this propensity of the entertainment and advertising industries, to be fully informed consumers, we need to separate out the sales pitch from the facts. Actually, what we really need to do is stop looking outside ourselves for our answers. We are the cause of our experience and can thus create whatever experience we want. More about that in Chapter 3. Number 6, working backwards. In the last chapter, we said it's not always obvious how we see ourselves in a given situation. We have to pay attention to things like how we're describing the event to ourselves and others, as well as what internal thoughts and feelings we're experiencing. Moreover, sometimes a significant amount of time can go by before we realize how we reacted was a problem. In those cases, we have to become like forensic investigators and work backwards. We ask, how would I have had to see myself in order to think, feel, speak, or act that way? We try to uncover an unhealthy self-image by looking at our reactions to past events. This type of inquiry can help increase our awareness and set change in motion for the future. An illustration of this can be found in the expense report example. Imagine if before you submitted the report to your boss, you thought about past interactions with him. You recognized that they didn't always go very well, and so instead of blaming him, you wondered how you would have had to have seen yourself in order to react the ways you did. You become aware that you often gave your power away by being fearful and seeing him as more powerful or important than you. So this time, before submitting your report, you spend 5 minutes seeing yourself differently. You decide to let go of the idea that he has power over you and instead envision yourself as his equal. You then choose to focus on some new empowering thoughts about yourself, such as, I'm an honest person and good employee, I'm trustworthy, I always do my best to comply with company policies, and so on. Of course, we have to assume this is actually true. If you're ripping off your employer, all the positive thinking in the world won't undo the underlying guilt. You also decide not to beat yourself up if things don't go well in your meeting with him. Do you think if you did all this before he came into your office, your experience would have been different? Changing our mind about ourselves has the power to change everything in our lives.
All right, so hopefully you enjoyed my impression of the soap opera actress. I worked really hard on that. So just to recap the last couple of weeks in case you weren't here, we said a few things about responsibility that I think are important to revisit. So the first thing is we said responsibility, taking responsibility is the ability to respond. All right, it's our ability to interact with the world. It's our ability to meet the challenges that come our way. It has to do with how we interact with the world. And I said, for me at least, I believe that there's 4 ways that we interact with the world. And that's through our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. So by taking responsibility for my thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, what I'm saying is I cause those things. We talked a lot last week and the week before about this idea that most of us, most of the time, have this view on life, which is other people or situations or circumstances make us think, feel, and say the things that we do. You make me feel, at least for me, has been, it's just fact. Other people make me feel the way I do. I don't make me feel the way I do. My clients make me feel this way, or my girlfriends make me feel this way, or the government makes me feel this way, or my neighbors it's always somebody else who's causing my emotional reactions, who's causing me to think in a certain way, to act in a certain way. And that's just not true. Nobody makes me feel anything. Nobody makes me think anything. Nobody makes me do anything. So taking responsibility, for me at least, is that it starts with that basic recognition. And as I said, we have to own our actions and reactions, because if we don't own it, we condone it. And eventually we're going to see, when we get to chapter 3, we're going to see there's a very important relationship between power and responsibility. So and I'll just give you the preview right now, we can't really have power in the world unless we're willing to take responsibility for our own thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, for our actions and our reactions. All right, so we talked a little bit about that the last couple of weeks. And the problem is, I mean, I can say for myself, I've been working on this stuff for years, and it still seems to me that other people or situations cause me to feel the way I do, because one minute I'm calm and peaceful, or, you know, everything's going fine, and then I get a phone call from somebody, and there's some kind of problem or some kind of whatever, and I get off the phone with that person, and I feel differently. You know, if they're calling me with a problem, I feel worse. If they're calling me with a surprise, something positive, I feel better. But the point is, before the phone call, I felt one way. After the phone call or meeting or whatever it was, I feel a different way. So it must be their fault that I feel the way I feel, that I think that I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. And I was pretty clear. I even had a really cool diagram that the way we process data, the way we interact with the world, we actually break any causal connection between what someone or something else is doing and what we're thinking, feeling, saying, or doing. We have this internal filtering process. Now, if you were here for the first few workshops, we talked a lot about the idea of this question of who do you think you are? How do you see yourself? And in my opinion, in my experience, how I see myself determines everything. The problem is never the situation. The problem is always how I see myself in that situation. Now, this internal concept, this idea about myself, this self-image, acts as a filter. So when information comes in from the outside world, it has to pass through that filter in my mind, wherever it is. And that filter says, well, this is the meaning of this situation. See, the world, or, you know, events, situations are meaningless until we give them a meaning. So in the example that we talked about last week and that I mentioned briefly in the audiobook excerpt, is an example is you come back from a business trip and your boss wants to talk to you about your expense report. And kind of just rushes into your office. He's got an angry look on his face, and all of a sudden you freeze up and you can't answer any questions and you can't find the receipts, and the whole thing is just a mess. And he storms out of your office and he promises to send somebody else on the next business trip to Las Vegas. And I said, you know, the reason I felt, the reason you felt the way you felt in that situation was not because of what your boss was doing. Now, again, I've said this many times and I'll say it again right now, we're not making excuses for somebody else's bad behavior. It's not what we're talking about here. Let's assume for the moment that while he was upset, he was still relatively appropriate in his behavior. The reason I felt the way I felt, the reason you felt the way you felt in that situation, was because of how I saw myself in that situation. I saw my boss as having power over me, being more important than me, you know, controlling my destiny, being responsible for my paycheck and my ability to take care of myself and my family. And if I upset him or if I did something bad or wrong, then all of a sudden he has power over me and he can make my life difficult, miserable, whatever. That's how I'm seeing myself in that situation. When he comes into the office and he starts asking me all these questions and I perceive that he has an angry look on his face, the meaning that I give that situation is that this is bad. Something bad is happening, something bad is about to happen, and I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. That's what causes the fear, the anxiety, the stuttering, the stammering, not being able to find the receipts. It's not what my boss is doing. It's how I see myself. That's what I'm reacting to. And that it's that filter that creates the meaning that I give the situation, and then it's always to that meaning that we react. The point of all of that is this internal filtering process breaks any causal connection between what's happening outside of me and what's happening inside of me. We said perhaps it's in the same situation, If I knew my boss was coming into the office to talk to me about my expense report, and I had some time to plan ahead, to set an advance intention and to do some preparatory work, I could work on seeing myself differently in that situation. I could work on seeing myself as equal, as an equal to my boss, as important, as valuable, not less than. I could see myself as being able to take care of myself. I could see myself as being articulate, producing the documents that he needs. I can visualize, I can see all of that ahead of time. And then when the situation, actually the event, when he comes in, I'm much better prepared. And I have a different experience. It's the same situation. He's coming in to talk about the expenses, but I have a different experience because of how I see myself. If he were the cause of my feelings, then it would always be the same. I couldn't change that. I would have no control, or as I'll talk about in the next chapter, no power in that situation. All right, so responsibility is the ability to respond, and we said that our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in life. And so part of taking responsibility is to begin to consciously and deliberately, like the new art behind me, I'll talk about that later, to consciously and deliberately choose thoughts that serve me, to see myself in a way that empowers me, to see myself in a way that allows me to navigate the challenges in life and have a successful outcome. That's my responsibility. I have to see myself, I have to choose thoughts, feelings, words, and actions that serve me, that move me forward. As I said in the audiobook, taking responsibility means I stop blaming everybody else for how my life is going. I stop blaming my boss or my clients or my parents or my children, if I had children, or whatever. I take responsibility for all of that. Now, where we're going to go today, see if I can pull it up here for you, is we're going to continue the conversation. Now, the other thing that was really important that we said last week, and I think this is where a lot of us get hung up on taking responsibility, is many of us equate responsibility with blame or shame or guilt or liability. Taking responsibility is, in many of our, I'll speak for myself, for a long time in my mind, taking responsibility was an admission that I was bad, was an admission that I wasn't good enough, was an admission that there was something wrong with me, that I was a screw up, that I was messing things up, that I was making mistakes, and that was more proof that I was unworthy, unlovable, all the stuff we've been talking about. And I know for me at least, that got in the way of me admitting when I did make a mistake, admitting when I had done something wrong, and being accountable for that. So I think it's really important, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go tonight, but I really want to hit this idea home that responsibility is not the same as blame. When I admit that I made a mistake, it's not more evidence that I'm a bad person. Now, I may need to make some changes in how I'm doing things, and if I've done something that's harmed another person, it's really important for me to take responsibility for that, make an amends, be accountable. But I found that when I do that, it actually builds my self-esteem. Because if I've done something that's harmed another person and I don't fess up to it, if I don't admit my mistakes, if I don't take responsibility for that, I feel bad, I feel shameful, I feel guilty. And when I admit that, when I take responsibility, when I go to the other person and tell the truth about that, it actually boosts my self-esteem. I feel better about myself. I'm thinking right now of a situation I had when I was a young attorney and I was working, I had one really big client for many years. And I had a lot of challenges in the relationships with the people that I was working with. But one day I screwed something up. I made a mistake on a federal filing for one of their trademark applications. And I was torn. I was like, do I tell them? Maybe I can just kind of, sweep it under the rug. Maybe they'll never find out. And the truth is, they might have never found out about it. But I knew that I screwed something up, that I made a mistake. And for like a day or two, I was agonizing over what should I do, and I was feeling so bad. And finally, I realized this was after I got into 12-step programs. And in 12-step programs, we talk about our part in things. We talk about making an amends. We talk about taking responsibility. And so I realized I needed to let them know that I had screwed this thing up. So I was so nervous, and I called them up, and my relationship was with the CEO of the company. He was a really nice guy. But I was just so sure he was gonna fire me, or yell at me, or something terrible was gonna happen. And I had the conversation with him, and I told him exactly what happened. I took responsibility. I said it was my fault. I missed the deadline or whatever it was. I told him what we needed to do to fix it. I found out what the solution was. And he just listened. And then I finished, and there was just silence for, it seemed like an hour, but it was only a few seconds. And he said, great, don't worry about it. Just take care of it. Just handle it. Do whatever you need to do. Don't worry about it. And he got off the phone. And I was like, holy cow, I was so relieved, And what I realized, number one, is that other people are a lot more forgiving of me than I am of myself. But number two, by taking responsibility, it was like, oh, because in the past, I wouldn't have said anything, and it would have haunted me probably for the duration of the relationship. And I would always be worried if they were going to find out, and then I would have to lie about it and make excuses and all of that. So by taking responsibility, by owning up to my mistakes, my shortcomings, it completely changes my experience of myself and of other people. All right. So if responsibility is not the same as blame, well, then what is responsibility? And I kind of hinted at this last week. And this is my alternative to shame, guilt, whatever else we normally associate responsibility with. For me, responsibility is about three things. It's about awareness, accountability, and action. Now, awareness is what I was just talking about. It's being aware that my actions, my reactions, my behavior has had some kind of a negative effect on myself or another person, and being aware of that, being conscious. It doesn't seem like much, but it's actually a big deal, because most of us, I'll speak for myself, most of the time, I'm kind of in, just kind of work mode, or I'm not really conscious. I'm not really present. I'm not really in the moment. So stuff can slip by, and I'm not even aware that I've done something that's harmed another person or harmed myself. It could just be driving on the highway, and I'm preoccupied with something, and I cut in front of somebody in another lane without even realizing that I'm doing that. So it's about being present. It's about being aware. It's about being conscious of what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, feeling, saying, and doing in each moment. Accountability is what I was just talking about. It's literally being willing to be accountable to myself or another person when I've done something that's had a negative effect on them. And it takes a willingness. I have to be willing to exactly what I talked about before, pick up the phone and call somebody and say, look, I screwed up. Or, I did this and this happened, and taking responsibility for my part in that. Now, we also said last week that taking responsibility is not taking responsibility for somebody else's part in the situation. And if there's a relationship, or if there's some kind of an interaction, chances are pretty good that the other person has a part in that too. But in an odd way, that's none of my business. You know, them taking responsibility for their part has nothing to do with me taking responsibility for my part. Because what I would do is I would sit around and say, well, they should apologize to me first because they did this or they did that. And it became all these excuses for me not to take responsibility for my part. Now, as a codependent, sometimes I don't know what my part is. I think every time somebody else is upset, it's got to be my fault. You know, I think that I'm responsible for everybody else's emotional well-being. I'm responsible for everybody else's thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And that's not true. And that has created so many problems in my life and so many different situations with so many different people. So beginning to understand that I'm not responsible for somebody else's feelings. Now, I am accountable to them for my behavior. And if my behavior harms them, then I get an opportunity to be accountable for that, to make an amends, whatever I need to do to set things right, which is, actually, we'll just say it now. So that's the action part. The action part is the setting things right part, where I actually make the phone call, sit down with the person and admit the mistake that I made. It's some form of action around being accountable and taking responsibility. Let's look at the assignment. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about that last slide you just saw, the difference between responding and reacting. But this was the assignment for today, and so we'll talk about that, responding versus reacting, and then we'll also talk about the assignment for tonight, and you guys will have an opportunity to share basically about what I was just talking about. All right, so let's take our break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. If you're new, I'm going to play a song, and this song has been a very important part of my being bigger than I think I am, of my reprogramming my thoughts and beliefs about myself. So listen to the song, and I put the lyrics on the screen so you can sing along if you want to. And if you're watching this at home after the fact, you're watching the video of this workshop, I'm actually not allowed to post the video with that song on YouTube because it's copyrighted. So the name of the song is Love My Life by Robbie Williams. And so that's the song I'm going to play now. And then when we come back, we're going to continue with the workshop. All right, we're back. So hopefully you're enjoying that song if you're new. And like I said, it's Robbie Williams, Love My Life. You can get it on iTunes or Amazon Music. There's also a video on YouTube of him singing that song. So what I want to do, as I said, I want to just go back real quick and talk about this topic of the difference between responding and reacting. So I kind of come back to this several times in the book, and I guess I'll probably come up, bring it up again later at different points. But this is kind of what I was talking about a few minutes ago. It's about being conscious. It's about being aware. It's about being in the moment and choosing how I'm going to respond to life. Remember, responsibility is respondability. If I'm not consciously and deliberately choosing how I respond to life, then I'm not in control of my life. I have no power to change my life. See, most of my life, as I said earlier, I thought it was everybody else's fault that I thought the things I thought, felt the things I felt, said the things I said, and did the things I did. But that left me powerless to change my own life because my life was dependent on what everybody else was doing or not doing to me or for me or about me. So responding is taking a pause whenever possible and consciously deciding how we're going to respond to that situation. It implies some level of deliberateness. It implies some level of intentionality. As I said, taking a pause is a great thing to do. Taking a breath, often if I get a text from somebody, for instance, or an email, if it's challenging in any way for me, I don't respond right away. I put a little time between my receiving the email or the text and when I actually respond to it. So putting that little pause in there, building that distance, that's the way I take care of myself. So building in a pause, being conscious, being intentional, being deliberate, that's responding. Reacting is kind of the opposite. Reacting is when we're reacting out of habit, when we're unconscious of our choice. We're not aware of what we're doing. We're just reacting in the moment. Now, if a car is coming down the street and I'm standing in the middle of the street, it's probably good that I react quickly and get out of the way. But a lot of times our reactions can cause more problems than the situation itself. So this whole thing that we're talking about here, this whole book, the whole idea of being bigger than we think we are, is about bringing some consciousness to how we're living. It's bringing some awareness to the moment. It's bringing intentionality to everything that we do, or at least to those situations that challenge us. Because as I said, if I'm reacting and it makes the situation worse, then it's not really serving me. Now, one of the things we can do that I've mentioned a couple of times now is plan ahead. If I know I'm going to have a difficult phone conversation with a client or a family member or whatever, I can plan ahead. I can find somebody and role play. I say, look, I got a difficult client. I got to talk to them later today. Can you pretend to be him or her? And I just want to role play this. So I go through the whole conversation, and it always, always, always helps when I do that. And then when I get in that conversation later in the day or whenever it is, I'm not as anxious. I'm not as reactive. So there are things that we can do to be proactive to take care of ourselves in situations that are difficult or challenging, so we don't just react. So I'm going to come back to this. This is going to come up. This comes up in later chapters, but I actually just wanted to introduce the subject, and also wanted to show off this cool slide that I made this afternoon. I make all these slides the day of, so this is how I spent my afternoon, looking for clip art and making these little slides for you guys. All right, so let's go back to our topic, our assignment for this evening. So we want to discuss the difference between responsibility and shame, blame, or guilt. And this could be different for everybody, but maybe give an example in your own life. How I became, until I really started taking responsibility for my life, it became kind of an art form for me to avoid responsibility. I thought I became pretty good at lying and deceiving people and all of that, but it never really worked out. It never served me. And so once I realized that if I make a mistake, it doesn't make me a bad person. It's not more evidence that I'm screwed up or a screw up. Then it was much easier for me to begin this process of owning my actions, owning my feelings, owning my reactions, owning my words, and so on. So I want to see what you guys have to say about this. So let's open it up now if anybody wants to. Oh, the other thing I forgot to do is if there's anybody who's new who would like to introduce themselves, you can do that. Or also forgot if anybody has a victory they want to share from the last week, anything significant that has happened for you, working with the concepts in the book or what we've been talking about. There's an opportunity to do that as well. So introductions, victories, or we can talk about the lesson or the assignment. Who wants to start?
Hi, it's Linda. Can I be heard?
We can hear you, Linda. Hi.
Huzzah, hello. I'm happy to report a victory in the past week, and actually Also, while I'm doing this class, I'm finishing an application to a graduate program that has suddenly appeared on the scene, and the deadline is imminent. But I mean, it just seemed doors just kept on opening, and I kept on looking for excuses, and I ignored it, and then boom, another nudge, and I said, okay, just do it. So, preview of coming attractions.
Woohoo! Excellent.
So
That's great. And is it fair to say that attending grad school is you being bigger than you think you are?
oh, very much so, yes. I'm petrified, but not so much. No, it just feels right. It feels right, given all the things that have led up to this moment. It seems to be a good fit. It's hard to, boy, now that I'm talking about it out loud, this is the first time I'm articulating this project out loud in words. So let me take a deep breath and talk about a possible interview with an admissions person. It just seems to be it's a gut feeling. The program looks good. I really haven't even studied all the requisites and such, but it just seems to be the right thing at this moment in time. We'll see how it goes.
Great. It's probably a testament to just where you're at in your life. I know you've been working very hard for years to make some changes in your own life, how you see yourself, who you think you are. And
yeah, indeed, yes.
And what happens is the universe reflects that and responds to that.
Very much so. And in fact, I mean, it's just the change in your art this week is apropos to the whole thing, like going from, the Manhattan skyline to the beacon and the lighthouse and the horizon. It's just beautiful.
Thank you. All right, well, since you brought it up, thank you, Linda. Since you brought it up, so this is a photo that I took, I think it was in 2014. I took a trip up to Maine. This is Portland Head Lighthouse in Maine. And now this is actually, you can see in the background, there's a fence. I don't know if you can see it or not. This camera's better. There's a fence under along the ridge, and that fence goes all the way around. So to get on these rocks, I had to climb over that fence, which is actually a felony, or at least a misdemeanor. But I did it to get this shot because I really wanted this photograph with the rocks in the foreground like that. And it was an amazing trip, actually. I have a whole collection of these photos on my website. What you see here is a 40 by 60 print, and it's done by a company called Big Wall Decor, and they represent my art for these large prints. Now, the cool thing about these prints, here's the one I used to have up there. So you can see this. The cool thing about these prints is that they come off the frame. They're fabric, and they come off the frame. I'm not going to pull this one apart now, but you can actually replace the print. You keep one frame, put on your wall or wherever it is, and you can change your art whenever you want. So, and they do these really large format prints. I'm actually going to see if I can get a promo code for you guys that we can use, that you guys can use if you're interested in something like this. And it's not just my art. They represent other artists as well. They have some really, really cool stuff. So thank you, Linda. Thank you for noticing. And who else? Who else wants to say hello, share a victory, or talk about the assignment?
Hi.
Is that Lynn?
Yeah?
Hello,
Do you-
Lynn.
Do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I like the decor in the back of you. It's very nice. The color
you.
are great. You're looking good. And maybe want to share something. Um, I do my best to speak English. um, yeah, it was. I had a friend that we were friends for a long time, and since I changed a lot of things in my life, but she didn't accept the way I am now. So, and I decided that I shouldn't cut things with her. So, and the last text she sent me, she said something about the new me that she didn't like it. And I take a time to step back and think about what she have said about it. Um, and I felt that, okay, she doesn't like it, so I don't have to be like she wants me to be. So it was a big step to decide that I decided not to respond at her text. And it was hard because I'm not used to do that. I always before said, it's okay, I'm going to be, and I don't want to do that anymore. I can't accept that. I don't feel good when I do it for others and not for me. So that's a big thing, but I'm taking my responsibility to be what I want to be, not what she's want me to be. So that was I feel like it's a victory because I was getting, because it's that it happens a lot of times and in the last few years, and I said, but okay, I think we have to go another road, and she's going to take her road. She doesn't like what I'm now, but it's her problem and it's not mine. So this is it.
I only have one thing to say, Lynn. Just
Yeah.
one thing. Woohoo!
Yeah, thank you. Ah, I
That's great.
finally got
I
it.
love
I
it.
speak tonight. That's a
Well,
victory
yeah,
too.
I love that you're sharing, and I love your story. I love that. I think it's great, and I support you in that. And this was a big part of my challenge. Was I spent so much time worrying about what other people thought about me and trying to please other people and
Yeah.
and all this craziness. And the fact of the matter is, I have no control over what other people think about me.
Yeah, and
And
I
go
have
ahead.
new plan, and it was nothing. I have new plan that I'm a hairdresser for 34 years now, but I have other passion in my life that I love. I like to go. I love to go to New York, and I want to be a part-time travel guide. But now with the virus, my trip was a big challenge for me to be that travel guide, and I was happy to do it. It was supposed to be in 2 weeks that I have my own group, to go and talk about New York and everything. And the things she was saying about it, that why are you doing this? You don't need this, or it was like that. So I said, why is she reacting like that? I didn't understand. She must be happy for me. I'm her friend, and when something good happens to her, I'm happy for her. So and it was like that for a long time, since I have changed and follow my passion and challenging myself. Now I like it very much. More I challenge myself, the more I like it about me. And I didn't did that before. Um, I think
That's
it's been
beautiful. I
in the
love
last
that.
8, 10 years. So
That's
so that's
beautiful.
it. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you very
I
much.
know you're going to have a chance to lead your group. It may not be this year, but it'll happen.
Yeah. I'm
And
going to
Lynn,
vision board.
do a vision board, positive affirmations, all the stuff that we've been talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
I know Lynn from Facebook, and she always is the first one to comment on my New York City photos.
Yeah, you're right.
I love your support. Thank you so much. It's just great, and I'm so glad that you're here and that you're speaking up. You're in Quebec, right? In Canada?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. And I have not yet gotten the audiobook thing straightened out yet for out of U.S. purchases, but I'll get that worked out for you.
Thank you. It's okay. I understand.
Okay.
Very much.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you very
Who
much.
else? Who else wants to say hi or talk about the assignment?
Hi, Peter. It's Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how are you? I know you
Good.
always call me Barb, so it's funny to hear you say Barbara. Okay, I guess it's kind of a victory. Certainly aware of all the things you've been saying as far as, responsibility and who I am. So, I've had the challenge with the job again, a new job. I just didn't even want to do it anymore. It's like, just drives me crazy. Experience is something. All right. So typical examples, she had to show me something. She's going on vacation next week. And it was how I realized that this is going to go either well or bad. And it's going to be my reaction or my responsibility. And it was just, it really played out because it was not, she's difficult, sorry, but she is. And that's okay. She's been, doing this for 16 years. And she's trying to show me her way, which is fine. I have done it before, but I'll do it her way because it's important in the job. And, it takes time to work those things out. And so I didn't understand and, this kind of stuff. To make a long story short, even the person, the boss, the priest, came in like once or twice looking at us like, is this going to explode? But it never exploded. It was difficult, but I watched my response to everything. And it turned out fine, Peter. It was so amazing, because it was not explosive. It was what it was. And at the end of it, it was like we went to our two separate corners and we were fine. I did not respond badly. I just responded the way you told me to. To be responsible for myself. And it turned out wonderful. I don't want to say wonderful. I'm not crazy about the experience. Somebody who has 16 years experience and I've never done it, I'm not thrilled with that. I always want to be the best. But it turned out fine. And it really has all to do with you, and everything you were saying was truly in the back of my head as all this was going on.
All right, Barb, I only have one thing to say.
Yes.
Woohoo!
Okay, yes. It felt so good, you have no idea. And then today, she had to stay late and we had to do some things, and it was he was there, the phone. It was crazy, and she doesn't handle responsibility. No, I shouldn't say that. She gets very upset, but I was there and everything turned out fine again. And I truly recognize that how you respond to us, the situation wouldn't have changed. It was all had to do with my response to it.
There you go.
No,
Yep.
It works.
It works. Now, I just want to.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
Right?
But what we don't realize is that we spent the last 40 years doing something else.
Yes.
That's the only reason it's so challenging now to do it differently.
Right. But it feels good.
And let me just clarify. I'm not going to take, I'm glad that what we're doing is helpful for whoever it's helpful for, but I will never take responsibility for your success. You did it. You did it. I didn't do it.
Okay, but you helped.
I helped.
Okay.
I helped. But I want you to own your power.
Okay. Thank you.
I want all of us to own our power. So great. I'm glad it's helpful. I'm glad this is helpful. I'm glad you show up every week. And you're doing it. Because there are people who are not showing up every week, or people who don't read the book, which is fine. It's not for everybody, but you're doing it. I'm helping, I'm assisting, I'm being of service, but you're doing it. This is all you.
Okay, yes, I agree with you.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome. And I'll say thank you to you.
You're welcome. It looks like Jessica wants to say something.
Hi, Peter. Hi, everybody.
Jessica,
Hi.
how are you, my dear?
I am doing really great, and I'm very glad to be here right now.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so proud. I'm proud of you, and I'm really happy to see the direction that you've taken, and I can't wait to read your book.
Cool.
So I wanted to talk about, first of all, I love just how you put responsibility is our ability to respond. And I really needed that message today. And so the difference between responsibility, shame, blame, and guilt in my life, mostly I've been accomplishing very challenging aspects of myself for probably the last 4 years. And this year is the first year where I'm really facing my unworthiness and my ability to trust myself. And so, the difference between, responsibility, shame, blame, and guilt, that's a tough one for me, especially if I'm looking at it as my ability to respond. As a codependent myself, I would tend to, again, like you had mentioned, think that it's my responsibility to take on the emotions of others to regulate a situation. And so that caused me to always feel shame. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, and the blame part, there's still that too, as you put it so perfectly tonight. Now I'm looking forward to learning more from you, Peter. Very happy.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad you're here, Jess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome.
Perfect.
Thank you. I have a signed copy of the book waiting for you.
I like that.
Awesome. All right. Who else? Anybody else want to chime in on anything? Cynthia.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Peter. This was so right on time and right on target, and just what I needed to hear today, because I had an experience today where I said out loud something that I don't say very often about, this is who I am and I'm not ever going to change. And I thought, oh, I'm in the right class tonight. So I wrote a note saying, I'm in the class learning how to alter things, and took some steps and responsibility for an agenda. And the shame, blame, and guilt, oh my goodness. I want to run away when I feel like I've done something wrong. And it's very hard for me to stay. At the very best, it's a time out for me, like I need to leave and then come back, with a new attitude. And I've done that and make amends and all of those kinds of things. But the guilt of being less than perfect. Oh, and you talk about that. I'm like, oh, I'm not perfect. No, and I'm not supposed to be. So I could take responsibility for the actions, my actions, and take responsibility for striving to be on time places, which is one of my continuous failings, and one that I have not remedied. I'm not 2 hours late anymore. I'm 6 minutes or 10 minutes, but it bothers other people a lot. And I miss out on stuff. So my responsibility is to start scheduling myself in a way that makes it possible to get from one place to the other. Even on Zoom, one thing overlaps another, and I schedule them back to back, and then don't leave at the exact time. Say, this is a hard finish time for me. So I need to take responsibility and choose to take responsibility for those things. And I did stay in the group that I'm trying to be in business with. So I haven't left. And I hope I won't leave. I just need to be responsible for my actions in a way that I haven't previously been. So today was right on target. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you. Remember, none of this is about beating ourselves up for being late or for not being perfect or for whatever it is, And that's, once I overcome that, once I start to see and here's the other thing. This is a reference Cynthia shared at the beginning when she first started sharing. And for anybody who's new, there's the first chapter we talk about, in the book I talk about this fact that we have these thoughts and beliefs about ourselves that we never question, that we say, well, that's just the way I am. I'll never change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Or that's just the truth about me. The minute you catch yourself saying that or thinking that, that's a red flag. That's like, whoa, wait a second. That's not true. Those are the exact thoughts and beliefs that run our lives, and we never question them. We just assume that that's the truth about us. And I know for me, and I know some of you guys have reflected this back, that it's true for you too. For me, all those thoughts and beliefs about myself, especially the negative ones. I mean, it's one thing if I walk around saying I'm a valuable person, I'm a worthwhile person, I'm capable, I'm competent, I can take care of myself. If those are the thoughts and beliefs that are running my life, I'm probably in pretty good shape. But if the thoughts or beliefs are, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I always do it the wrong way, nobody's going to like me, those negative thoughts and beliefs, for me at least, I recognized at a certain point that those were the conclusions of a 6-year-old. I came to those conclusions about myself when I was 4 or 5 or 8 or 6 or whatever age it was, when I was in a situation with whoever, and I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the mental faculty, the understanding to understand that what they were saying was about them, not about me. And as kids, we take everything literally and we take everything personally. And we make everything about us. Kids are egocentric. So that's where I learned to take responsibility for somebody else's unhappiness or somebody else's anger. They told me it was my fault that they were feeling the way they felt, and I believed them. So I thought, gee, I must be a bad person because they're angry and they're telling me it's my fault. I must be a bad person. And that thought ran my life for 40 years, and I wasn't even aware that it was in there. So we want to begin to pay attention. This is the whole idea of being conscious, being present, being in the moment. And when that thought comes up, question that. Say, wait a second, is that really true? If nothing else, say, oh, that guy Peter, he said I have to question those thoughts where I think it's just the way I am. Because I'll tell you right now, none of that stuff that we believe, the negative stuff that we believe about ourselves, is really true. Now, what happens is we have that thought or belief, and that thought or belief runs our lives, and we have thoughts, feelings, words, and actions that are consistent with that thought and belief, those negative thoughts and beliefs. And remember, our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our words and actions, and our words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in life. So if I have negative thoughts, I'm going to have negative feelings, negative words and actions, negative outcomes. But what happens is it becomes a loop, and the negative outcomes feed the negative thoughts, and the train starts all over again. So we got to stop that train. And one of the things I mentioned in chapter 1 in the book is, what if, because a lot of people will say, I've said this, well, wait a second, I have proof that I'm not good enough because I got fired from this job, and I got, this person in a romantic relationship, she left me, and this happened, and I have all this proof that I'm not lovable, that I'm not good enough, that I'm don't have what it takes. But what if the thoughts preceded the experience? What if what was going on here eventually created what happened out there? So that's my belief, at least. And I can see now, because just the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you guys, this is me seeing myself in a new way. This is seeing myself differently. Just the fact that I'm in front of the camera, some of you know I've been behind the camera for the last 15 years, and now all of a sudden I'm in front of the camera, rubbing my nose, and it's a whole new thing. And it's like I have an opportunity to love myself when I'm being imperfect, or when I make a mistake, or when I screw something up. And that's the real work, and that's where the real results come from. And that's when my life changes. So it takes a lot of courage. And for me, you hear, especially like in 12-step programs, they talk about willingness. Well, for me, willingness is just another word for courage. It takes courage to say, I'm going to love myself when I least like who I'm being. If you have the book, you look in chapter 4, that's my definition of unconditional love. Loving myself or another when I least like who we're being. It's easy to love people when they're doing all the things we want them to do, when they're being who we want them to be, when they're cooperating with our version of reality. And so, and in chapter 7, I talk about forgiveness. It takes a lot more courage to forgive than to attack or retaliate or seek revenge. Actually, I don't look very often, but occasionally I look at what's going on outside in the world, all the craziness that's happening now. And, there's a lot of people who are, and it's not a judgment or anything like that. And we could have a different response to what's happening if we saw ourselves differently. And if we had the courage to forgive rather than seek retaliation or revenge, we'll get there. That's chapter 7. We're still in chapter 2. So anyway, I applaud you guys. You guys are inspiring me. Hopefully what we're doing is helpful for you. We're almost out of time, but it looks like maybe Judy wants to say something. Judy, do you want to say hi?
I'd like to say hi and that thank you. I was a little multitasking, which is why I had the video off before, doing something with my husband because we haven't had time. And but you brought up just now speaking about the egocentricness of the child and the whole thing about where we got a lot of this stuff. And it's just, I'm reading for a course I'm taking, Healing the Shame That Binds You, by Bradshaw. And it's all about exactly what you just spoke of. It's like putting it to task, so to speak. And I can relate to everything everybody has said. And boy, it's hard to be responsible, and in a 12-step program, if you point at somebody else, there's three fingers pointing back. So I always, have to remember that, it's easy to react and not respond. And I also work at responding. I'm so much better today than I ever was before, because that pause makes all the difference in the world. And the other thing is that I have my first paying client on Friday to do something with. And I've already done like an assessment thing on them. And they kind of walked away, and I didn't know what was happening. And I was, I've kind of left it on the back burner, not to get too. I made one attempt to contact the person, and it turns out that there's been some illness in her family. So, it's not about me all the time, but I really didn't like lose a lot of sleep over this. I mean, those are major victories for me. So anyway, it's exciting at this old lady here, is starting a new career. And I've supported people a lot for nothing, for many, many hundreds of people for nothing. And now to do it, and get paid is kind of like, yay, it's exciting. I'm scared to death. I mean, I admit it. I'm scared to death, but I'm not going to act that way. I'm taking all of this in with me, and I'm going to hold my head up and act like I've already acted like, like I really know what I'm doing, or this person wouldn't be coming back. So isn't that cool?
I only have one thing to say. Judy. Woohoo! That's great. Congratulations. And you weren't here, but maybe 3 weeks ago on my recommended reading list was John Bradshaw, Homecoming and Healing the Shame That Binds You.
Oh, no, I wasn't here.
And Family Secrets. So I love that you mentioned those books. Anybody who's new to codependence recovery work, to inner child work, John Bradshaw's, those 3 books in particular were instrumental for me. So John Bradshaw, he's passed away, but in the 1990s and early 2000s, he used to be on PBS all the time. He had specials on PBS. And his books, Homecoming, Healing the Shame That Binds You, and Family Secrets, really good stuff. Thank you, Judy.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else? It's almost time to wrap up. Anybody else want to say anything? Say hello? Chime in? All right, so what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to play that song one more time. It's 3.5 minutes. So look at read the lyrics, sing along if you want. I see some of you guys sing along, and then we'll come back and say our final goodbyes. All right, so that's it for this evening. Anybody want to say anything before we go? Remember, you can invite your friends, and all are welcome. In 2 weeks, you'll see on the confirmation email you get when you register, we'll have to start using a password to get into the Zoom meeting, because I don't want to use the waiting room, because then I have to stop what I'm doing to let people in from the waiting room. So in 2 weeks. Now I made it really simple. All right, what's this word? What's this word right here? Bigger. All caps.
Bigger.
All caps. All right, that's the passcode. All right, that's all you have to know. And I'll put it when it's not next week. I think it's in 2 weeks. But I'm just giving you a heads up. But when the confirmation or reminder emails go out, it will have that, you'll see the password in there. But it's just bigger, all caps. All right? Anybody else want to say?
Yeah, I'm kidding you. You know me and computers. Are you sure it's not going to be difficult? I'm kidding you, Peter. Good night. Thank you. You gave me anxiety thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do it.
You trust me, you guys can all handle this. Remember, it's just, you know, if it's all how we see ourselves. So I know several of you pretty well, and several of you are what you consider technically challenged, and that's okay. And from my perspective, you know, it's just a thought, it's just a belief that we have about ourselves. You know, I have certain beliefs about myself that said I can't do this or I can't do that. And a few weeks ago, I put a quote on screen from Henry Ford. I don't have it here on the tablet now. And the quote was, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're going to be right. That was Henry Ford back in the 1900s, recognizing the power of our beliefs. Our beliefs create our experience. So this is the opportunity. And again, when we get to chapter 3, there's a reason I'm spent all this time on who do you think you are and on responsibility, because it all comes together in chapter 3 when we talk about power, when we talk about consciously and deliberately and intentionally creating our lives. That's where we're going with all of this. So start right now. You know, what's that belief that I have about myself that this is going to be hard, I'm not going to be able to do this? Is that really true? And it's not to say that there might not be challenges. You know, that's actually part of the journey that we're on. But I can always say, instead of, gee, there's no way I'm going to do this, I can't handle this, I can say something like, well, I may not do it perfectly, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to ask for help. Maybe there's another way of looking at this. Maybe I can do this. One of the things that we did in one of the first weeks, it's not in the first edition, but I'm putting it in the second edition of the book, was a reminder. Think about a time when you surprised yourself, when you did something that you didn't think you could do. We've all had that experience. That's possible for any situation in life. We can surprise ourselves by being able to do something we didn't think we could do. If you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're going to be right. Henry Ford said that, not me. All right, anybody else want to say anything? All right, guys, have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
See you next
Thank you,
week.
Peter. Thanks,
Nice.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.